I didn't wake up because of a noise. Our house is solid, a renovated craftsman in a quiet neighborhood that swallows sound, and Preston sleeps like the dead. Heavy rhythmic breathing that used to comfort me, but now just sounds like ignorance. I woke up because of the light. It was that specific invasive shade of artificial blue that cuts through eyelid darkness. 1:34 a.m. I rolled over, blinking against the grit in my eyes, expecting to see Preston scrolling through sports scores or checking emails because he couldn't sleep. But Preston was fast asleep, his back to me, the duvet pulled up to his ear. The light was coming from his nightstand. His phone was vibrating. Not the loud, angry buzz of a call, but the soft, incessant hum of a text message notification, muffled against the wood. The screen lit up the room like a miniature rave, casting long, distorted shadows against the wardrobe. I'm not a snooper. In 8 years of marriage, I think I've looked at his phone maybe 3 times, usually to check the weather or find a recipe when mine was charging. Trust wasn't something we worked on. It was just the floor we walked on. It was there. It was solid. I sat up, sliding my legs out from under the warm covers, shivering as the cool air hit my bare skin. I reached over him, careful not to touch his shoulder, just intending to flip the phone over or plug it in so the battery wouldn't drain. My fingers brushed the cold glass. The screen was locked, but the preview was enabled. Mallory, 1:34 a.m. She's working late tomorrow, right? Come over then. I'll make your favorite. I froze. My hand hovered over the device like it was radioactive. I read it again, the words swimming into focus as my brain tried to reject them. Mallory, my little sister. My baby sister, whose wedding I was maid of honor for in exactly 8 weeks. She, me, Allison, the wife, the obstacle. I stared at the name at the top of the screen. Mallory. Not Mal or some code name. Just her name, sitting there in the stark white font of an iPhone notification. The casualness of it felt like a slap. She's working late tomorrow, right? It wasn't a question about my well-being. It was a logistical inquiry. It was scheduling. I was an inconvenience to be navigated around, a calendar entry that needed to be managed so they could eat. What? His favorite? I felt a physical kick in my chest, a thud of adrenaline so potent it made my teeth ache. I looked down at Preston. He let out a soft snore, his face relaxed, looking for all the world like the man I'd loved for nearly a decade. The man who bought me soup when I had the flu. The man who held my hand at my grandfather's funeral. He was sleeping peacefully while his girlfriend, my sister, texted him sex plans at 1:30 in the morning. I picked up the phone. My hand wasn't shaking yet. I was too deep in shock for the tremors to start. I needed to see. I needed to know if this was a joke, a misunderstanding, a wrong number, anything but what it clearly was. Swipe up. Passcode. I typed in 1014, our anniversary, October 14th. The lock icon at the top of the screen clicked open. He hadn't even changed it. He was that arrogant or that lazy or that sure that I was too stupid to ever look. The phone unlocked, and suddenly I was standing in the center of a burning building holding the match. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. I didn't stay in the bedroom. If he woke up, if he saw me holding the phone, he would spin it. He was in sales, he could sell ice to a polar bear, and he would sell me some lie about planning a surprise party or a misunderstanding. I needed to be somewhere he couldn't interrupt me. I took the phone and walked downstairs, my bare feet silent on the hardwood. The house was cold, that deep, settled chill of the middle of the night. I went into the living room, sat on the rug in front of the unlit fireplace, and opened my laptop. I plugged his phone in. I needed a backup. I needed a copy. I needed to own this data before he could delete it. While the progress bar crawled across the screen, backing up 15%, 23%, I opened the Messages app on his phone. I clicked on Mallory's thread. I expected to see a few flirtatious texts. Maybe a drunken mistake from a few weeks ago. You know, the kind of thing people confess to on talk shows. It just happened once. We were drunk. I scrolled up and up and up. The scroll bar on the right side of the screen barely moved. Preston, yesterday, 4:12 p.m. God, I can't wait to get out of here. She's talking about painting the bathroom again. Shoot me. Mallory, yesterday, 4:14 p.m. Just nod and smile, baby. Only a few more hours until you can escape. I felt bile rise in my throat. Just nod and smile. That's what he had been doing at dinner. Nodding, smiling, eating the roast chicken I made. I kept scrolling. The timestamps went back months. Preston, December 12th. You looked incredible in that dress today. It took everything I had not to grab you right there in the kitchen. Mallory, December 12th. Careful. She was standing right next to me. December 12th. That was Mom's birthday dinner. I remembered that night. I remembered Preston being so attentive, pouring wine for everyone, laughing at my dad's terrible jokes. I remembered him hugging Mallory hello and goodbye. I remembered thinking, I'm so lucky my husband and my family get along so well. I scrolled back further. September, August, July. Mallory, July 4th. Meeting you by the boathouse in 10. She's distracted with the fireworks setup. Preston, July 4. On my way. Don't wear the underwear, July 4th. We were at the lake. I was setting up the fireworks display for the nieces and nephews. Preston had said he needed to go check on the grill. He wasn't checking the grill. He was screwing my sister behind the boathouse while I lit sparklers with the kids. My stomach twisted violently, and I had to put the phone down on the rug for a second to breathe. The room was spinning. 2 years. The thread went back 2 full years. I saw a photo attachment from last March. It was a selfie of Mallory. She was in her apartment. The apartment I helped her find. The one I co-signed the lease for because her credit score was garbage. She was wearing a baggy navy blue hoodie, holding a coffee mug, looking tousled and sleepy and sexy. I recognized the hoodie. It was Preston's. His vintage UW hoodie. He had told me he lost it at the gym. He made a whole production out of being annoyed about it. I love that thing, he'd said. Some jerk probably swiped it from the locker room. He didn't lose it. She was wearing it. She was wearing my husband's clothes like a trophy. I sat there on the cold floor, the laptop light illuminating my face, and I felt the tectonic plates of my life shifting. Everything I thought was real. My marriage, my relationship with my sister, my past 2 years, was a lie. Every smile, every I love you, every family dinner was a performance. I wanted to run upstairs. I wanted to wake him up by smashing the phone into his face. I wanted to drive to Mallory's apartment and burn it down. But then I looked at the backup progress bar. Complete. I had the data. I had everything. And if I scream now, if I blew it all up tonight, I would just be the crazy, hysterical wife. They would gaslight me. They would say I was invading their privacy. They would minimize it. No. I closed the laptop. I unplugged the phone. I wiped my fingerprints off the screen with the hem of my t-shirt. I walked back upstairs, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I placed the phone back on the nightstand exactly where it had been, angling it slightly so the charging port faced the wall, just as he left it. I climbed back into bed next to the stranger I had been sleeping with for 8 years. He shifted in his sleep, his arm flopping over to drape across my waist. I didn't shove it off. I lay there feeling the weight of his arm, heavy and suffocating, and I stared at the ceiling until the sun came up. Morning came with a deceptive brightness. The sun hit the yellow curtains in the kitchen, filling the space with a warm, cheerful glow that felt like an insult. I was operating on 0 sleep and enough caffeine to kill a small horse, but my hands were steady. I was making pancakes. It was Sunday. Sunday meant pancakes. It was the routine. I whisked the batter. Flour, eggs, milk, vanilla. Whisk, whisk, whisk. The repetitive motion was grounding. If I stopped moving, I thought I might start screaming and never stop. I heard the heavy tread of footsteps on the stairs. Preston. He walked into the kitchen, scratching his stomach, his hair sticking up in a tuft on the left side, a cowlick I used to think was adorable. Now, looking at it, I just wanted to grab a pair of scissors and hack it off. "Something smells good," he mumbled, voice thick with sleep. He walked over to where I was standing by the stove and leaned in to kiss my cheek. I didn't flinch. I didn't pull away. I let his lips touch my skin. It felt like being branded. "Buttermilk," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, too high, too bright, brittle as glass. I thought we needed a treat. "You're the best," he said, moving to the coffee pot. He poured a mug, took a sip, and sighed with exaggerated pleasure. "Did you sleep okay? You were tossing around a bit." "Oh, you know," I said, flipping a pancake. The batter sizzled. "Work stress. That project with the branding agency is a nightmare." "You work too hard, Allie," he said, leaning against the counter, watching me. He looked so normal. He looked so husbandly. He was wearing his gray sweatpants, the ones with the hole in the knee. "You need to relax more. Maybe we can do a movie tonight?" I looked at him. I really looked at him. I searched his eyes for a flicker of guilt, a shadow of deceit. There was nothing. Just the blue eyes I fell for in college, clear and guileless. He was a sociopath. There was no other explanation. He had texted my sister 6 hours ago to arrange a hookup, and now he was asking me about movie night. "Maybe," I said. "Mallory texted me." I watched him. I dropped the name like a stone into a pond and waited for the ripples. He didn't even blink. He took another sip of coffee. "Oh yeah? What's up with Mal?" "She wants to know if you're free to help move some boxes for the wedding favors later this week." I lied. I wanted to see if he would clear his schedule. "I can probably make time," he said easily. "Tuesday might be tight. I've got that late meeting with the client from Denver, but Wednesday is open." Tuesday. The text said, "Come over then." The late meeting was Mallory. "You're so good to her," I said, sliding a stack of pancakes onto a plate. I set it down in front of him. "Blueberries are in the fridge if you want them." "Thanks, babe." He sat down and cut into the stack. "We're family. That's what family does." He grinned at me, a piece of pancake hanging off his fork. It was a grin that said, "I have everything I want. I have the wife who cooks for me, and the mistress who screws me, and neither of them has a clue." I smiled back. It was the hardest thing I have ever done physically. It took every muscle in my face to pull my lips upward. "Yeah," I said, "that's what family does." I turned back to the stove so he wouldn't see the look in my eyes. I gripped the spatula so hard the plastic handle dug into my palm. "Eat your pancakes, Preston. Enjoy them, because they're going to be the last peaceful meal you ever have." Monday morning at the office was a blur of white noise. I sat at my desk staring at a spreadsheet that might as well have been written in hieroglyphics. My body was in the chair, but my mind was stuck in a loop, replaying the last 6 weeks, recontextualizing every weird moment I had dismissed. The perfume. God, I was so stupid. It was 6 weeks ago. Preston had come home late. Client dinner, obviously. He leaned in to kiss me hello, and I smelled it. It wasn't subtle. It was Santal 33, that trendy, expensive, woody floral scent that half of Portland wears, but I don't wear it. I wear vanilla oil. "You smell nice," I had said, wrinkling my nose. "Like flowers?" He hadn't skipped a beat. "Oh God, it's Sharon from the marketing team. She's a hugger. She practically bathed in the stuff today. It's giving me a headache." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? Sharon was a hugger. 3 days later, I was at Mallory's apartment. I went into her bathroom to use the toilet, and there it was on the counter, a bottle of Santal 33. I remembered picking it up. "New scent?" I'd asked when I came out. "Yeah," she'd said, applying lip gloss in the mirror. "Davis likes it. Thinks it makes me seem sophisticated." I had put the pieces together and then immediately taken them apart because the picture they formed was impossible. Now, sitting at my desk, I needed to know where he was, right now. I pulled up the Find My app on my phone, We shared locations, another safety feature he insisted on years ago, which I now realized was probably so he could track me to make sure I wasn't coming home early. His dot was supposed to be at the gym. He always went to the gym on Mondays at lunch. The blue dot pulsed. It wasn't at the 24-hour fitness. It was drifting. It was hovering over a block on Hawthorne Boulevard. My heart slammed into my throat. Mallory's office wasn't on Hawthorne, but there were plenty of hotels nearby. I grabbed my purse. "I'm taking an early lunch," I told my receptionist, not waiting for a response. I drove like a maniac. I ran a yellow light that was definitely red. My hands were sweating on the steering wheel. If I caught them, if I walked in on them having lunch or holding hands, I didn't know what I would do. I had this fantasy of throwing a drink in his face, of flipping a table. I parked illegally in a loading zone near where the blue dot hovered. I ran down the sidewalk, scanning the windows of every cafe and restaurant. "Please let me be wrong," part of me prayed. "Please let the GPS be glitching." And then I saw him. He was sitting in the window of Daily Grind, a coffee shop. I froze behind a street lamp, my breath coming in jagged gasps. He was alone. He had a laptop open. He was typing. He had a half-eaten bagel on a plate. I watched him for 5 full minutes. No Mallory, no secret rendezvous, just a guy eating a bagel and working. I slumped against the brick wall of the building next to me. The relief was dizzying, followed immediately by a wave of shame. "You're crazy, Allison," I told myself. "You're losing it. Maybe the texts were a prank. Maybe you misread them." I pulled out my phone to check the screenshots I had synced to the cloud just to be sure. There it was, a text from last week. "Preston, I'll be at the Daily Grind on Monday to finish that report. Meet me in the back parking lot for a quickie. 12:45? Mallory. Can't, baby. Lunch with Davis's mom? Ugh." I looked at the time. 12:48 p.m. He was there. He had tried to meet her. She just couldn't make it. He wasn't innocent. He was just disappointed. I watched him take a bite of his bagel, wiping cream cheese off his lip. He looked bored. He checked his watch. I turned around and walked back to my car, my legs feeling like lead. I wasn't crazy. I was just early. That night, Preston went to bed early. Exhausted from the gym, he claimed. I waited until I heard the snoring start, about 20 minutes before I crept downstairs to my laptop again. Texts were one thing. They were emotional proof, but I needed forensic proof. I needed to know how much of our life he had spent on her. I logged into our joint bank account. We had a primary checking account for bills, but we also had individual credit cards. We didn't really check each other's statements because, again, trust. I knew his password. He used the same 3 variations for everything. Seahawks 12. I got into his Visa account. I downloaded the CSV files for the last 12 months and opened them in Excel. I started filtering. Hotel Lux. There were 6 charges in the last 4 months, $289 per night, November 4th. I was in Seattle for a conference, October 12th. I was visiting my college roommate in Eugene, September 20th. He told me he was on a boys' camping trip. I looked at the camping trip charge. He had bought $400 worth of gear at REI before that weekend to prove he was going camping. I checked the REI return history. He returned the tent and the sleeping bag 3 days later for cash. He slept in a luxury hotel with my sister while I thought he was freezing in a tent in the Cascades. I kept filtering restaurants, bars, liquor stores, and then I saw it, a charge from Klein's Jewelers, $1,500, dated 3 months ago. I stopped breathing. 3 months ago? My birthday is in June. Christmas was months away. I hadn't received any jewelry from him in, 2 years. The last thing he gave me was a Fitbit, some $500. That was a significant amount of money for us. We were comfortable, but we weren't drop 1.5K on a whim, rich. I clicked on the transaction details. It just said purchase. I closed my eyes and tried to picture Mallory. I tried to picture her hands. She talked with her hands a lot, always waving them around. I saw a flash of gold. I opened Instagram on my phone. I went to Mallory's profile. I scrolled back 3 months. There was a photo of her holding a latte art cappuccino. Lars, morning vibes. Saki, wedding planning. On her left wrist, draped casually over the cuff of her sweater, was a delicate gold chain with a small diamond charm. I zoomed in. It looked expensive. It looked tasteful. It looked exactly like something Preston would pick out, because I had pointed out a similar one in a magazine 6 months ago and told him I loved it. He bought her the bracelet I wanted. I slammed the laptop shut, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the silent living room. I didn't care if he heard. I almost wanted him to hear. $500. He wasn't just sleeping with her. He was courting her. He was dating her. I sat in the dark, and for the first time, I didn't feel like crying. I felt cold. I felt a precise surgical rage taking over. You want to buy her jewelry, Preston? Fine. I'm going to make sure that bracelet is the most expensive thing you ever bought. It's going to cost you your house, your job, and your reputation. Hey, over here! Mallory was waving from a booth in the back of Blue Garden, our usual lunch spot. She looked radiant. Of course she did. She was 28, in love, and secretly stealing her sister's husband. It must be great for the complexion. She was wearing a cream-colored cashmere sweater that looked soft enough to sleep in. I walked over, forcing my body to move normally, forcing the smile onto my face. It felt like I was wearing a mask made of dried clay. "Hey, Mal," I said, sliding into the booth opposite her. She jumped up to hug me. She smelled like Santal 33. The scent hit me like a physical blow, triggering a gag reflex I had to swallow down with sheer will. "You look tired, Allie," she said, pulling back and scrutinizing my face. Her concern looked so genuine. That was the scariest part. She really believed she loved me. She had compartmentalized her betrayal so deep she probably didn't even see it as betrayal anymore. "Just busy," I said, unfolding my napkin. "You know, end of quarter." "Ugh, capitalism," she joked. "Anyway, we need to talk bridesmaids. I'm thinking sage green, or is that too basic? Davis thinks blue, but he has no taste." "Sage is nice," I said. "It photographs well." "Right?" That's what I said. She reached for her water glass, and there it was, the bracelet. It slid down her wrist, catching the overhead light. Gold, delicate, the diamond charm sparkling mockingly. I stared at it. I couldn't help it. My eyes locked onto the evidence of my husband's bank account on my sister's arm. "That's pretty," I said. My voice was steady. I was proud of that. "Is it new?" Mallory froze for a millisecond, a tiny, imperceptible glitch in her matrix. Her hand instinctively went to cover the bracelet, then stopped. She twisted the chain. "Oh, this," she said, looking down at it with a soft, secretive smile. "Yeah, Davis gave it to me. Just, an early wedding present. He's so sweet." The lie slid out of her mouth as easily as breathing. "Davis gave it to me." "Wow," I said. "He has really good taste. It looks expensive." "I think he saved up for a while," she said, looking me right in the eyes. "He said he wanted me to have something special to wear during the planning stress." I gripped my fork under the table until my knuckles turned white. "That is special," I said. "You're a lucky girl, Mal. A guy who surprises you with diamonds? That's a keeper." "I know," she beamed. "I'm so lucky. Honestly, sometimes I pinch myself." "I'm going to pinch you," I thought. "I'm going to pinch you until you wake up." "So," I said, taking a sip of my iced tea to wash down the bile, "tell me more about the wedding. How's the seating chart coming?" "Oh my God, a nightmare." She launched into a monologue about Aunt Linda and Uncle Jerry not being able to sit together. I sat there, nodding at appropriate intervals, watching the bracelet glitter on her wrist. Every time she moved her hand, it flashed. $1,500. $1,500. I didn't eat my salad. I pushed the lettuce around the plate, imagining it was their faces. I needed more than digital footprints. Texts can be faked, they'd say. Bank charges can be explained away. Maybe he bought it for me and lost it? I needed a witness. 2 days later, on a Thursday evening when I knew Mallory was at her spin class, I drove to her apartment building. I had a key. For emergencies, she said. I was going to plan a recording device. I know, illegal. I didn't care. But I didn't need the key. As I was walking up the steps to the main entrance, the front door swung open and an elderly woman with a wheeled shopping cart struggled to get out. "Let me help you with that," I said, rushing forward to hold the door. "Oh, bless you, dear," she huffed, maneuvering the cart over the threshold. She looked at me, squinting through thick glasses. "You're Mallory's sister, right? The tall one?" I paused. "Yes, I'm Allison. I'm Mrs. Higgins, 3B, right across the hall." She wiped her forehead. "I've been meaning to catch you." My stomach tightened. "Is everything okay?" "Well, frankly, no." Mrs. Higgins straightened her coat. "I didn't want to say anything to Mallory because she can be a bit snappy. But the noise, dear, it's too much." "Noise?" "Late at night." She lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "The walls are thin. I hear him coming over at all hours. Midnight, 1 a.m. "Davis?" I asked, testing the waters. Mrs. Higgins scoffed. "No, not the fiancé. The blonde one, with the gray sedan. He parks it right in front of the trash chute, blocks the whole alley. I've told him 3 times to move it, but he just smiles and says he won't be long." The blonde one. The gray sedan. Preston drove a charcoal gray Audi sedan. He was blonde. "I'm so sorry about that," I said, my voice trembling slightly. I'll mention it to her." "Please do," she said. "He was there just last Tuesday, stomping up the stairs at nearly 2 a.m. Some of us have to sleep." Tuesday, the night of the "she's working late" text. "He won't be bothering you much longer, Mrs. Higgins," I said. "I promise." She patted my arm. "You're a good sister. You look out for her." "I try," I said. I didn't go inside. I didn't need to plant a bug. Mrs. Higgins was better than a bug. She was a disgruntled neighbor with a grudge against his parking. She had seen him. She had interacted with him. I walked back to my car. I added Mrs. Higgins to my mental list of witnesses for the prosecution. The bridal boutique was awash of white tulle and champagne flutes. It smelled like expensive potpourri and desperation. "Okay, step in," the consultant said. Mallory stepped into the Vera Wang gown. It was stunning. I hated it. I was on duty. Maid of honor duty. My job was to help get her into it. I knelt down, gathering the heavy silk train, smoothing it out. "Careful with the lace," Mallory directed, looking down at me. "It's delicate." "I've got it," I said. I stood up behind her. The back of the dress was a long row of tiny fabric-covered pearl buttons, 40 of them. "Can you button me?" she asked. I started at the bottom. My fingers brushed her skin, her warm, living skin, my sister's skin. Button. 1 year of betrayal. Button. The text message about my cooking. Button. The hotel room in Seattle. Button. The bracelet. I looked up and caught our reflection in the 3-way mirror. There we were, the sisters. Mallory looked ethereal. The dress fit her like a glove. Her hair was piled up in a messy bun, tendrils framing her face. She looked like a princess. I looked tired. I was wearing jeans and a black turtleneck. I looked like the shadow, the help. "Oh my God," Mallory whispered, staring at herself. Her eyes welled up. "Allie, look at me." "You look beautiful, Mal," I said, and she did. That was the unfairness of it. Evil should look ugly. It shouldn't look like a fairy tale. She turned around, the dress swishing, and grabbed my hands. Her palms were sweaty. "I can't believe it's happening," she said, a tear tracking through her foundation. "I'm getting married, to the love of my life." I didn't blink. "You really are." "I'm so glad you're my maid of honor," she said, squeezing my hands. "I know I've been a bridezilla lately. I'm sorry. But you're my rock, Allie. You always have been." I don't know what I'd do without you." She leaned her forehead against mine, an intimate, sisterly gesture we had done since we were kids. I could feel her breath on my face. "I love you, Sissy," she whispered. I felt a surge of rage so pure, it almost blinded me. I wanted to grab the measuring tape off the console and wrap it around her neck. I wanted to scream, "You're sleeping with my husband. Stop acting like you love me." But I didn't. I held still. "I love you too," I lied. It was the first time I had said it back since finding out. The words tasted like ash, but I said them because I needed her to feel safe. I needed her to feel secure. I needed her to walk onto that plank blindfolded. "To the happy couple," Preston raised his wine glass. The red liquid sloshed dangerously close to the rim. We were at Luigi's, an upscale Italian place downtown. Double date. Me and Preston. Mallory and Davis. Davis clinked his glass against Preston's. "Thanks, man." "Really? You guys have been so supportive." I looked at Davis. He was a golden retriever in human form. Dark hair, kind eyes, a smile that took up half his face. He came from old money but acted like he worked at a non-profit. He adored Mallory. He looked at her like she hung the moon. He had no idea she was sleeping with her brother-in-law under the table, literally. I felt a bump against my leg. I pulled back. I looked down. Mallory had slipped her shoe off. Her foot was extending under the table, searching. It wasn't aiming for Davis. It was aiming for Preston. I watched Preston's face. He didn't react, but his hand tightened slightly on the stem of his glass. He shifted his leg, opening his stance to let her in. They were playing footsie, at dinner, with their spouses present. The audacity was breathtaking. "So," Davis said, oblivious, cutting into his veal parmesan, "we were thinking about the vows. We want to write our own." "That's sweet," Preston said. "Keep it short though, right? People want to get to the open bar." He chuckled. Mallory giggled. "No, seriously," Davis said, his face turning earnest. "I want it to be meaningful. I think honesty is the most important thing. You know? Like promising to always be truthful, even when it's hard." I choked on my water. I coughed, grabbing a napkin. "You okay, hun?" Preston asked, patting my back. His hand felt like a spider. "Fine," I rasped. "Went down the wrong pipe." "Honesty is key," Mallory said, nodding solemnly at Davis. She put her hand over his on the table. "I totally agree, babe. No secrets." She said it with a straight face. She looked him in the eye and promised no secrets while her foot was rubbing Preston's calf under the tablecloth. I looked at Davis. I felt a sudden, desperate urge to kick him, to pass him a note, to drag him into the bathroom and show him the screenshots on my phone. "She's lying to you. Run. Get out now." But I couldn't. If I told him now, privately, it would be a mess. Mallory would cry. She would spin it. She would say Preston preyed on her, which he probably did, but she was a willing participant. She would say it was one mistake. Davis loves her. He might forgive her. They might sweep it under the rug and make me the villain for trying to ruin their happiness. Preston would deny it. He would gaslight me. No. Davis needed to see it. He needed to see the evidence, undeniable and raw, in front of witnesses so they couldn't talk their way out of it. I was saving Davis. I truly believed that. But to save him, I had to let him crash. "I think that's beautiful, Davis," I said, regaining my voice. "Write that down. Promise honesty. Make her promise it too." "I will," Davis smiled. I smiled back. "Oh, she's going to promise it. And then I'm going to show you exactly what her promises are worth." 2 weeks later, the Children's Literacy Gala. Black tie. I was wearing a burgundy gown that plunged slightly in the back. Preston was in a tuxedo. "You look stunning," he told me in the hallway as we were leaving. He ran a hand down my hip. "Thanks," I said, pulling away to grab my clutch. "We're going to be late." The ballroom was packed with Portland's who's who. Chandeliers, champagne towers, a silent auction offering safaris to Kenya. Mallory was there, obviously. She was on the planning committee. She was wearing emerald green silk. She looked spectacular. Davis was by her side, looking uncomfortable in his tux, tugging at his collar. I played the part. I shook hands. I laughed at bad jokes. I let Preston put his hand on the small of my back as he guided me through the crowd. "I need to check on the auction items," Mallory announced around 9:00 p.m. "Davis, get me a drink." "Sure thing, babe." Davis headed for the bar. Mallory disappeared through the side door near the kitchen. I watched her go. I checked my phone. 9:02 p.m. 2 minutes later. "My phone is blowing up," Preston said, pulling his device out. "Work crisis. I need to step into the hall to take this. Order me a gin and tonic?" "Sure," I said. He walked away. He didn't go to the main lobby. He went toward the side corridor, the same one Mallory used. I stood there surrounded by wealthy people bidding on vintage wine, and I started a timer on my phone. I sipped my sparkling water. I nodded at a woman complimenting my dress. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 12 minutes. Where were they? A closet? A bathroom? The loading dock? At 15 minutes, I started to feel sick, the boldness of it. We were all here. Davis was 20 feet away at the bar. I was right here, and they were off somewhere, risking everything for a quick groping in a service corridor. 17 minutes and 40 seconds. Mallory reappeared. She came from the kitchen doors. She was smoothing her skirt. She looked flushed. I watched her walk up to Davis. He handed her a drink. She smiled, but her eyes were darting around the room. 2 minutes later, Preston came back from the main lobby entrance. He had circled around, smart. He walked up to me. "Crisis averted," he said, slipping his phone into his pocket. "Sorry about that," I looked at him. His bow tie was slightly askew, just a fraction of an inch off center. I looked at Mallory across the room. Her lipstick, a dark berry shade, was smudged at the corner of her mouth. Just a blur. "You have something?" I reached up and adjusted Preston's tie. I pulled it tight. Crooked. "Thanks," he smiled. "Hey, family photo." A photographer from the Portland Tribune waved us over. "Can I get the sisters and the husbands? Beautiful group." We lined up. Preston on the left. Me, Mallory, Davis. "Squeeze in tight," the photographer yelled. "Look like you love each other." Preston put his arm around my waist. Mallory leaned her head on my shoulder. Davis grinned. Click. The flash blinded me for a second. "Perfect," the photographer said. "That's a keeper." I blinked the spots from my eyes. I knew that photo. I would find it later. I would save it. It would be the before picture in the documentary of our destruction, the moment before the bomb went off. I looked at Preston's profile as he chatted with the photographer. He thought he had gotten away with it. He thought he was smarter than everyone in the room. 17 minutes, I thought. Enjoy them, Preston, because I'm taking the rest of your life. 2 weeks before the wedding, my timeline was built. My folder was organized. I had treated this like a high-stakes ad campaign, every asset labeled, every file redundant. I was sitting at my desk at work eating a sad salad when I decided to do a final quality check on the smoking gun folder. The specific screenshots of the texts arranging the hotel hookups, the ones with the dates visible. I opened the cloud drive. Error 404. File not found. My heart stopped. I clicked refresh. File corrupted. Unable to display preview. I felt a cold sweat break out instantly, dampening the back of my blouse. I clicked on the other folders. The photos were there. The bank statements were there. But the text message screenshots, the core of the entire case, were gone. Just gray squares with jagged lines through them. I remembered then. I had done that specific backup on our home Wi-Fi during a storm. The connection must have flickered. The upload was incomplete. The originals were on Preston's phone, which I couldn't touch without waking him up. But wait, the iPad. Preston had an iPad he used for reading comics and watching Netflix. His iMessage was synced to it. I knew this because he used to complain about the notifications popping up while he was trying to read Batman. He was at the gym right now. No, Monday. He was at the gym, meeting Mallory. The iPad was at home. I looked at the clock. 1:15 p.m. He usually worked out until 2 hours, then showered at the gym or Mallory's, then went back to the office. I had 45 minutes. I ran to my car. I sped all the way to our neighborhood, ignoring speed bumps, my tires screeching as I turned onto our street. I pulled into the driveway. Preston's Audi wasn't there. Thank God. I let myself in, dropped my keys, and ran to the living room. The iPad usually lived on the coffee table. It wasn't there. Kitchen counter? No. Bedroom nightstand? No. Panic started to claw at my throat. Where is it? I tore through the house, guest room, office. Then I remembered. The bathroom. He sometimes took it in there to read on the toilet. I ran into the master bath. There it was, sitting on the hamper under a towel. I grabbed it. I pressed the home button. Passcode required. I typed in 1014. It unlocked. I opened messages. It started syncing immediately. Downloading messages from iCloud. The bar crawled. Come. Suddenly, I heard the garage door rumble. My blood turned to ice. He was home early. Why was he home early? I heard the Audi engine cut. The heavy thud of the car door. The progress bar was at 80%. I couldn't stay in the bathroom. If he walked in and saw me holding his iPad next to the toilet, he'd know. I ran into the walk-in closet. I buried myself in the back, behind my winter coats and his suits. I sat on the floor, clutching the iPad to my chest, praying the screen glow wouldn't give me away through the fabric. I heard his footsteps on the stairs. He was whistling Sweet Caroline. He walked into the bedroom. I held my breath. "Allie," he called out. "You home? I saw your car." Silence. "Huh," he grunted. He walked toward the closet. I squeezed my eyes shut. Then he stopped. I heard the zip of a zipper, the rustle of clothes. He was changing. "Damn it," he muttered. "Where's that blue tie?" He was right outside the closet door. I looked down at the iPad. Download complete. I quickly airdropped the screenshots to my phone. Sent. Then I deleted the airdrop notification history. Preston walked away from the closet. "Whatever," he muttered. I heard him walk into the bathroom. The water turned on. I waited 5 seconds, then crawled out from the coats. I shoved the iPad under the bed, a plausible place for it to have fallen. I slipped out of the bedroom, down the stairs, and out the back door into the yard. I circled around to the front, unlocked the front door loudly, and yelled, "Honey, I'm home! Forgot my laptop!" The water in the bathroom stopped. "I'm in the shower," he yelled down. "Okay, just grabbing my computer." I grabbed nothing. I ran to my car, backed out, and drove 3 blocks away before I pulled over and vomited into a Starbucks cup. I checked my phone. The screenshots were there, crystal clear. I had them. "Have you thought about talking to him?" Dr. Harlow looked at me over the rim of her glasses. Her office smelled like lavender and expensive neutrality. I had been seeing her for 3 weeks. "I can't," I said, twisting a tissue in my hands. This was a performance. I needed Dr. Harlow to document that I was trying, that I was rational, that I was a victim struggling with processing trauma, not a vindictive harpy planning a nuclear strike. "Why not?" she asked gently. "Because I'm scared," I said. It wasn't a lie. I was scared, just not of confrontation. I'm scared that if I ask him, he'll lie. And if he lies to my face, I don't know what I'll do. I need to be sure. I need to process this. Dr. Harlow nodded, scribbling in her notebook. "Patient exhibits avoidance due to fear of gaslighting. Perfect." "It's valid to protect yourself, Allison," she said, "but holding on to this secret is toxic. It's eating you alive. You've lost weight." 12 pounds, I said. "The infidelity diet. Very trendy." She didn't smile. "The wedding is in 10 days. Are you really going to go through with being the maid of honor while carrying this?" "I have to," I said, looking out the window at the rainy Portland skyline. If I blow it up now, I ruin Mallory's day. I ruin the family. I need to wait until the timing is right. There is never a right time for devastation, she said. Oh yes, there is, I thought. Ideally, just after the soup course and before the dancing. I just want to be dignified, I told her. I want to handle this with grace. Grace is overrated, Dr. Harlow said. Sanity is better. I'm working on it, I said. I left the session feeling grimly satisfied. If Preston's lawyer ever tried to claim I was unstable, Dr. Harlow's notes would show a woman trying desperately to hold her family together, paralyzed by shock. I wasn't paralyzed. I was coiled. 3:12 a.m., 4 days before the wedding. I was standing in the guest bathroom with the door locked and the shower running to mask the sound. I was staring at myself in the mirror. My eyes were dark circles. My skin was pale. I looked like a ghost. Start with the childhood story, I whispered to my reflection. I cleared my throat. I forced a smile, that wide, crinkling, supportive sister smile. Mallory has always been the one who felt things deeply, I said to the mirror, my voice pitching up into a sweet, nostalgic register. When we were kids, she cried because a squirrel fell out of a tree. She has such a big heart. Pause for laughter. I dropped the smile. I let my face go slack, then cold. But there's another side to Mallory, a side that takes what she wants, a side that doesn't care who she hurts. I watch my own pupils dilate in the mirror. I practiced the reach. I had bought a new clutch, a stiff, silver-beaded thing. It was ugly, but it was rigid enough to hold my phone upright without fumbling. Unclasp, reach. Grip, lift. I did it 10 times. Unclasp, reach, grip, lift. I have the receipts, I whispered. I practiced holding the phone steady. My hands had been shaking for weeks, a constant neurological tremor from the cortisol flooding my system. Steady, I hissed at my reflection. Do not shake. Do not let them see you shake. I unlocked the phone. I navigated to the album labeled The Wedding Album. I swiped. Text, swipe. Hotel bill, swipe. The bracelet photo. Look at it, I commanded the invisible audience of shampoo bottles. Look at what they did. I did this until 4:30 a.m., until my voice was hoarse and my movements were robotic. I wasn't writing a speech anymore. I was programming a weapon. The rehearsal dinner was at a seafood place on the waterfront. Private room, 40 people. I sat next to Davis's mother, a lovely woman named Eleanor, who kept patting my hand and telling me how lucky Mallory was to have a sister like me. She says you've done everything, Eleanor gushed. The flowers, the dress, the coordination. You're a saint, Allison. I just want her to have the wedding she deserves, I said, taking a sip of iced tea. Preston was across the table, charming the bridesmaids. He was telling a story about a fishing trip. He looked relaxed. He looked happy. He caught my eye and winked, a literal wink. I felt a surge of nausea so strong I had to look at the breadbasket to ground myself. Then came the gifts. Mallory stood up, tapping her glass. I just want to thank everyone, she said, tearing up. She looked beautiful in white lace, but especially my sister. Allie, come here. I stood up. My legs felt like wood. She handed me a small velvet box. Open it, she squealed. I opened it. It was a silver necklace, a heart split in two. Best sisters. I have the other half, she showed me her neck. We're two halves of the same whole. I love you so much. The room went, oh. I stared at the cheap silver charm, two halves of the same whole. It's beautiful, Mal, I said. Thank you. I let her clasp it around my neck. The metal felt cold against my skin. It felt like a collar, a choke chain. Later, as we were leaving, Preston pulled me aside by the valet stand. You okay? He asked, his voice low. You seem checked out. You barely ate the salmon. Just tired, I said. Big day tomorrow. He squeezed my shoulder. "You've been working so hard. You look exhausted, honestly. Maybe take a Xanax tonight? I want you to enjoy tomorrow." Take a Xanax. He wanted me sedated. He wanted me docile. "Good idea," I said. "I'll sleep like the dead." "That's my girl." He kissed my forehead. I got into the car. I didn't take a Xanax. I stayed up until dawn, staring at the silver heart necklace on the nightstand, waiting for the sun to rise on his execution day. The bridal suite smelled of hairspray and nervous sweat masked by floral perfume. "Where is the lash glue?" someone screamed. "I have it," I said calmly, pulling it from my bag. I was the general. I was the rock. I was moving through the room with terrifying efficiency. "Mallory needs water, not champagne," I directed a bridesmaid. "She's dehydrated." Mallory was sitting in the makeup chair, looking pale. "Allie," she whispered, "I feel sick." "It's just nerves," I said, rubbing her shoulders. "You're getting married. It's huge." "What if—" She trailed off. "What if I'm not ready?" For a second, I thought she might confess. I thought she might say, "I'm sleeping with your husband." "You love him, don't you?" I asked. "Yes," she said, "I do. Davis is amazing." "Then you're ready," I said. I helped her into the dress. Again, the buttons. Again. "Emergency check," I said, opening my oversized tote bag. "Safety pins? Check. Blister pads? Check. Lipstick? Check. Phone charger? Check." I touched the inner pocket of the bag. My clutch was there, loaded. "You think of everything," Mallory said, looking at me with wide, grateful eyes. "I don't know what I'd do without you." "You'll never have to find out," I said enigmatically. "What?" "Nothing, just—" "I'm always here." I checked my phone. 10 a.m. I had one more text to send. I sent it to Jenna, my best friend, who was in the audience. "Get a good seat. You'll want to see this." The ceremony was outdoors. The Willamette River sparkled in the background. It was disgustingly picturesque. I walked down the aisle. I held my bouquet of white roses. I stood at the altar to the left of the officiant. I watched Preston take his seat in the 3rd row. He gave me a little wave. Then the music swelled. Mallory walked down. Davis cried, actually cried. It was hard to watch. Davis was a good man. He was innocent in this. I felt a pang of guilt, sharp and hot, about what I was about to do to him. But saving him required hurting him. It was an amputation to stop gangrene. The vows. "I, Mallory, take you, Davis." She promised to hold him, to comfort him. "I promise to be faithful to you," she said. Her voice didn't shake. "To be honest with you, to put you above all others." I looked at Preston. He was watching her. He had a small, possessive smile on his face. He wasn't looking at the bride. He was looking at his girl. I looked at the guests. My mom was sobbing into a handkerchief. My dad looked proud. Lies, I thought. Every single pixel of this scene is a lie. The wind rustled the eucalyptus arch. "I now pronounce you husband and wife." They kissed. The crowd cheered. I clapped. My hands stung. "Enjoy the kiss, Mal," I thought. "It's the last happy one you'll ever get." The reception was in a ballroom with floor-to-ceiling windows, candles everywhere. Dinner was served. Filet mignon. I cut mine into tiny pieces and didn't eat a bite. Speeches began. The best man, a frat brother of Davis's, told a story about a road trip to Vegas. It was funny, harmless. "And now," the DJ announced, his voice booming, "the maid of honor, the bride's sister, Allison." Applause. I stood up. I grabbed my champagne flute in my left hand. I grabbed my clutch in my right. I walked to the microphone stand. The room quieted. 200 faces turned toward me. I smiled. "Hi, everyone," I said. My voice was steady. It sounded amplified, godlike in the big room. "For those who don't know me, I'm Allison, Mallory's big sister." Preston was beaming at me from table 4. Mallory has always been particular, I started. A few chuckles. She knows exactly what she wants. When we were kids, she wouldn't eat a sandwich unless it was cut into perfect triangles. She notices details. I looked at Mallory. She was smiling, holding Davis's hand. She planned this wedding down to the second, I continued. Every flower, every song. She wanted everything to be perfect. She wanted everyone to see a perfect love story. I paused. I let the silence hang for a beat too long. But the thing about Mallory, I said, my tone shifting. I dropped the warmth. I let the cold seep in. Is that she's also very good at hiding things. She has a hidden side, a side that most of you don't know. The smile on Mallory's face faltered. Just a twitch. A side, I said, leaning into the mic, that is capable of incredible, meticulous planning, not just for weddings, but for other things. The room went very quiet. The air conditioning hummed. I think we should talk about the last 2 years, I said. Preston stopped smiling. He sat up straighter. Specifically, I said, how my sister has been sleeping with my husband for the last 2 years. The reaction wasn't a scream. It was a gasp. A collective, sucking intake of breath from 200 people. It sounded like the room was losing oxygen. Then, a crash. Someone dropped a fork on a china plate. "What?" Mallory whispered. It was picked up by the mic because she was sitting right behind me. I didn't look at her. I opened my clutch. I pulled out my phone. "I have the phone," I said. "I have the messages. Let's read a few, shall we?" I tapped the screen. I held it up, screen facing the head table, facing Davis. "March 3rd, I read. My voice was clear, ringing like a bell. "Sent from Mallory to Preston. She's working late. Come over. I'll wear that thing you like." "Allison, stop!" Preston shouted. He stood up, knocking his chair over. "She's drunk. Sit down, Preston." My dad's voice. It boomed from the front table. Dad was standing, his face purple. I ignored them. I kept reading. December 12th, while we were at Mom's birthday dinner. Preston texts Mallory, "I can't wait to get you alone later." Mallory replies, "Bathroom? 5 minutes?" I looked at Davis. He wasn't moving. He was frozen, staring at me. His face had drained of all color. He looked like a wax figure. "Davis," I said, turning to him, "check your phone. I just airdropped you the entire file. All of it. The hotel receipts, the dates, the pictures." Davis looked down at his phone on the table. It lit up. He picked it up. "Davis, don't." Mallory grabbed his arm. "She's lying. She's crazy. Davis, look at me." Davis shook her off. Hard. He scrolled. I watched his eyes. Left, right. Reading, processing. "Is this real?" he whispered. His voice was broken. "It's not," Mallory started. "Is it real?" Davis roared. He slammed his hand on the table. The glasses jumped. The room was deadly silent. Mallory was sobbing now. Ugly, gasping sobs. It was a mistake. It was just... "How long?" Davis asked. He stood up. He towered over her. "Davis, please. How long?" 2 years, I answered for her into the microphone. "Since the 4th of July barbecue." Davis looked at Preston. Preston was standing near his table, looking trapped. He looked like a rat in a bucket. Davis didn't scream at Preston. He didn't punch him. He just looked at him with a disgust so profound it felt physical. Then Davis took his wedding ring off. He dropped it into his champagne glass. Plink. He walked out. He walked straight down the center aisle, past the guests, and out the double doors. "Davis!" Mallory screamed. She tried to run after him, tripping on her train. Pandemonium broke loose. My mom was screaming. Preston was trying to push through the crowd toward me, shouting, "You bitch! You crazy bitch!" My cousin Seth stood up and blocked him. "Don't even think about it, man." I stood at the mic for one more second. I looked at the wreckage, the crying bride, the fleeing groom, the exposed husband. "Cheers," I said. I drank the champagne. I didn't stay for the brawl. I walked off the stage, grabbed my tote bag from under the table, and walked out the side exit to the terrace. My hands were finally shaking, violent, uncontrollable tremors. I dropped my clutch. Gotcha! Jenna was there. She picked up the clutch. She had her car keys in her hand. Go, now, she said. We ran to her car. I threw myself into the passenger seat. As we peeled out of the parking lot, I saw Preston running out the front door, looking wild. We drove in silence for 10 minutes. Then I started laughing. Hysterical, sobbing laughter. "Did you see his face?" I gasped. "Did you see?" "I saw," Jenna said, gripping the wheel. "You scorched the earth, Allie. It was terrifying and amazing." I spent the night at Jenna's. I turned my phone off. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee and Jenna sitting on the edge of the bed with a laptop. "So," she said, "you're trending." "What?" "Someone filmed it, obviously. It's on TikTok. It's on Twitter. Maid of Honor Revenge is the #1 trend in the US right now." She turned the laptop around. There I was, in high definition. But the thing about Mallory is, she has a hidden side. The video had 2.4 million views. The comments were a war zone. "Queen energy. This is savage. Why ruin the wedding? Just tell him privately. Nah, cheaters deserve this." But the internet wasn't the only fallout. Preston worked in tech sales. His company had a strict moral conduct clause because they dealt with government contracts. By Monday morning, the video had reached his HR department. Jenna's friend Marcus, who worked with Preston, texted us. Preston was escorted out by security at 10 a.m., fired effective immediately, bringer of bad publicity. Mallory wasn't spared. She lived in an apartment owned by Davis's family trust. It was a perk of the engagement. Tuesday, an eviction notice was taped to her door. Not a standard 30-day. A violation of lease terms, illegal activity nuisance clause. They were stretching the legalese, but they had expensive lawyers. She had to be out in 7 days. She moved back in with our parents. I was alone in my house. Well, my house now. I changed the locks on Sunday. I filed for divorce on Monday. The blast radius was complete. 3 months later, the snow had melted. Portland was gray and rainy. I was living in a loft in the Pearl District. I had sold the house. I couldn't live in the walls where he lied to me. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Hey, Allison, it's Davis. I know this is weird, but I'm in town to sign some papers. Coffee?" I stared at the text. I hadn't spoken to him since the wedding. I hadn't spoken to anyone from that side. "Sure," I typed back. "The daily grind on Hawthorne? See you at 2. I walked in. He was sitting in the back. He looked thinner. He had a beard now. He looked older. "Hey," I said. He stood up. He didn't hug me. He just nodded. "Hey." We sat down. "So," he said, stirring his black coffee, "you're famous." "Infamous," I corrected. "How are you holding up?" "I'm okay," he said. "The annulment went through last week. It never happened. Legally, at least." "I'm sorry, Davis," I said. "I really am, for doing it that way." He looked at me. His eyes were sad but clear. "Don't be," he said. "If you had told me privately, I don't know if I would have believed you, or I would have let her talk me out of it. Seeing it, hearing you read those texts in front of everyone, it made it real. It made it impossible to ignore." "I burned the village to save you," I said. "Yeah," he half smiled. "You did, and I'm barely singed. She's the one who burned." We sat in silence for a while. It was comfortable. We were the only 2 people on Earth who knew exactly what that specific heartbreak felt like. We were veterans of the same war. "I'm moving to Seattle," he said. "Fresh start." "Good for you." "But I come down here for work sometimes," he said. He hesitated. "Maybe we could do this again? Dinner next time?" I looked at him. I saw the pain in his face, but also the resilience. "I'd like that," I said. Okay. He finished his coffee. We walked out into the rain. "Did you ever sell the bracelet?" he asked suddenly. "What bracelet?" The gold one. The one Preston bought her. I laughed, a dry, sharp sound. No, I threw it in the Willamette River. It's sleeping with the fishes. Davis laughed too. It was a real laugh. Perfect, he said. He walked to his car. I walked to mine. I didn't know if we would date. I didn't know if we should date. But as I watched him drive away, I felt something I hadn't felt in 2 years. I felt clean. The lies were gone. The truth had scorched everything, and now, finally, something new could grow. Update. 3 months later. We did have dinner, then another. We're taking it slow, really slow. We go to therapy, separately and together. My mom still won't talk to me. She says I broke the family. But my dad comes over for beers on Sundays. Mallory is working at a retail counter in the mall and posting sad quotes on Instagram. I blocked her. Preston moved to Arizona. I heard he's selling solar panels door to door. Davis and I are going to Italy next month. Not for a honeymoon, just for us. We made a promise. No secrets. And for the first time in my life, I believe it. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.